Looks like we got 1 minute left. I'm trying to remember how to do this. I haven't been here for a long time. You're welcome. And you know, I didn't stop and think about you either when I was gone. That's a wow. Okay, it's 5 o'clock. We're going to bring the work session to order for August 11th, 2025. And we've got 2 items on our agenda. The first one is discuss CIP 2026 through 2030. Chelsea is going to lead that discussion.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. We have not met since July 14th. That was the last council meeting. So at the July 14th meeting, we had a work session. We talked about the city's capital improvement plan at that work session, if you all recall. So the CIP runs from fiscal year 2026, which is the current fiscal year we're in, through fiscal year 2030. The council adopted the CIP sometime in late 2024, and we've already been talking about a number of amendments to make to that CIP. So if you all recall at the last work session, that was 4 weeks ago, we had a number of projects we were discussing with the city council about the potential of moving around in the CIP. We ran out of time, so what I have prepared tonight is a tentative work session calendar for us to continue those discussion and possible presentations on some of those projects we identified that may be moved around in the CIP. So I have this as an update tonight. This is most of the update I'm providing you with. So for the rest of the year, I tentatively have the city council work session calendar planned out. Some of these things may need to move, so this is tentative. August 25th, I tentatively have the discussion on the Central Iowa Waterworks purchase capacity and the possibility of us doing a water and sewer rate study discussion next fiscal year. So that is the tentative work session for the next council meeting. September 8th, I have lined up Snyder and Associates to give a quick presentation and discussion on the 3rd Street Corridor Study, Town Square Master Plan. I'd also like to take that meeting and that opportunity to talk about the traffic signal at 3rd and Broadway that we discussed at the last work session. So I would lump those 3 things together. September 22nd, I have that we would continue our discussion on disposal of city-owned properties. And something that the city staff will be working on prior to that work session is coming up with a city mission and city values for the council to consider adopting. This was something I was assigned to do as part of my performance evaluation, and that's something the city staff will be working on. So I'd like to take that work session opportunity to talk that through. October 13th, I tentatively have the trunk sewer discussion. October 27th, I have no 5 p.m. work session. I will be at the ICMA conference that meeting. That doesn't mean you can't all have a work session, but I will be at training that meeting and will not be available for the council meeting that night. November 10th, I have topic to be determined. November 24th, that is the week of Thanksgiving. I have no work session for that meeting. And then December 8th, I would be hopeful that we could have some sort of update on the regional park project. Does anybody have anything to add, or are you all good with the proposed tentative schedule I have, knowing it could possibly change?
I'm good.
Okay. So I think this is a much better method to kind of having dedicated topics to work sessions and making sure that we don't run out of time like we did at the last work session. Okay, so that's the update I have for the CIP tonight for the council. I'd like to dive into the city's economic development policy. If you could please all pull that policy up, that was in your packet. Do you all have that in front of you? Okay. I have some talking points tonight that I would like to discuss with the council on this policy. I want to tell you that this policy was created in 2019 when I was hired to be city manager. And this was something the council tasked me with as one of my first items to address. So it is going on to be about 6 years old. It has been amended once. When we did the development survey, this was one of the comments that was made from one of the developers in Polk City, that they did not think our policy was clear, or we did not advertise the policy. So this is an opportunity for the council to review and provide me with some feedback this evening. So I'm going to give you a little history, and then I have some very specific questions I would like the council to consider, and we can further discuss this at a future work session if we need to. But as I mentioned, this was created in 2019. It's been amended once in 2022. The intent of the policy was to create what the city was offering for incentives and what it would not offer incentives for. So at the time this policy was created, it was the council's request that we stop incentivizing residential development. As you can see in the policy does say that we will not incentivize residential development or multi-residential development. That is listed in the policy. Is this something the council wants to leave in the policy? I will tell you that cities bigger than Polk City typically do not incentivize residential development, especially cities located in the Des Moines metro. You might have larger cities that are really needing to grow their residential base and may have a different viewpoint, but as for the Des Moines metro, you don't see a lot of incentives offered for residential. How do you all feel about the fact that the policy says we will not offer incentives for residential?
I'm happy to see us not specifically offering it towards residential. I don't think we need to help incentivize. People want to be here. The only possible change I would think about would be clarifying any ideas we have about like a mixed-use development. Particularly thinking about what we had envisioned for the 3rd and Broadway property, where we were looking at apartments over commercial, and how that would affect what we do for
Yeah, that was my
for
thought
incentivizing.
as well. I don't think we need to bring in residential, but if we did have a desire for a project like that where it was residential on top of retail, I'd be open to it for a situation like that. So I don't know how you write that in, but
Having some sort of
Mixed
clarity
use.
about
Yeah,
that mixed
okay.
use.
where, really we want the commercial there, but, sometimes we want both.
Yeah.
But yeah, so not, maybe not solely residential, or I don't know how we word that, but yeah, I agree.
Okay. So not multifamily per se, but mixed use residential where it's, traditionally the second story or above is apartments or residential space.
Vertical mixed use,
Vertical mixed use.
not just mixed use with the misinterpretation that you can hodgepodge commercial and residential together on a single plane.
I think that's a good clarification.
Yeah, because people will take mixed use and the traditional definition would be vertical. And I don't think people realize that every time.
Okay.
Do people always think of mixed use as commercial and residential? Or are there other examples of mixed use?
That's what I think of when you use the term mixed use. I don't know what other people think of, but I would say that's your more traditional mixed use package.
But yeah, if we need clarity in the language to make it easier for people to understand, because again, I think we all kind of, as we sit here, kind of know the concept we're thinking of, but as you'll field questions from people or, apply in future years, that's whatever clarity we need for that, I think would be helpful.
Think of anything else?
Okay. So the policy does allow for residential incentives if the city is getting something in return. So the examples that I'm going to give you, this is not limited to these items: multi-use trail, upsizing of sanitary sewer main, upsizing of water main, looping of water system, et cetera. So if there is a return to the city, there is the availability for a developer to receive incentives for their residential development. So that is the one caveat listed in the policy. So I will say that the policy is really targeted to incentivizing commercial and industrial development, which I think has always been a goal of the city councils, at least in the 5 or 6 years that I've been with the city. You all know that we are very flip-flopped on our tax base. We've always been about 90-10. I think we're like closer to 91-9 or 92-8 now. So it's obviously a priority of all of yours to encourage commercial and industrial development. So the way the policy is wrote today, we offer tax increment financing incentives for commercial and industrial development. The minimum assessed value, or the estimated minimum assessed value, has to be $500,000 or more, and there has to be some sort of job creation from the project. So when I typically meet with developers and they ask about incentives, I tell them our baseline offering is that we can offer you a 75% rebate for 5 years. So 75% is 75% of the available increment. It doesn't necessarily mean 75% of the taxes they pay. And the way our policy is also written is we require the developer to do their project, they construct the project, they pay their taxes, and then we rebate them back a portion of taxes. We do not pay developers money up front to do their development, and I will get into that in a second. But do you have any questions on that? So I would say that amount is eligible to anybody that meets the criteria of the policy. And that is, I'm trying to think, I think it was Ace Hardware that we recently gave that incentive package to, most recently. We have gone for a longer period of time on other developments, such as 1010 Tyler Street. And then we also had a development agreement with the Move, if you all recall that. So those are some of our more recent development agreements. We will have some development agreements for your review and consideration in the near future for 1401 Bridge Road. That is the ATI project, as well as we are negotiating with Knapp Properties on a turn lane for their development, Big Creek Commons, and the city's regional park. So why do we do 75%? We can go up to 100%. The reason we landed on 75% several years ago is if you're incentivizing with 75% of rebate, that means the other 25% of increment goes to the other taxing entities. So the school district, the county, the community college. It makes it a little bit easier to explain that specifically to the school district. So that is why we wrote that language in there. We could always go higher. We could always go above the 75%. That's what our policy says right now. So to give you a good example of what does 75% for 5 years equal, it's about 10% of the construction project. That is how that math typically works. So if you go higher than 75% or you have the term longer than 5 years, you're paying for more than 10% of the construction project. So I certainly think that if there are developments we're looking for, we have flexibility to go longer, and we have done that. We did that for 1010 Tyler Street, the strip mall with Arcadia and Duck Donuts. But that is the baseline. That is the minimum we offer for a project. We can go higher for projects that we're really excited about. Does anybody have any concern about that? When I put it in terms of it covers 10% of the developer's construction project, do you think that's too low? Do you think that's too high?
So I'm kind of curious, Chelsea, how do other cities do it? Do they pretty much have that? I see it in here, it says we reserve the right to modify it as we see fit, right? I'm paraphrasing. Do other cities do the kind of the same thing? They have this one tier, you have to meet this one tier, and then everything else is kind of ambiguous. You have a conversation with us and we figure out what it is? Or do they have like a tiered approach? If you do this, you get this. If you do this, you get this. So it's more black and white in the documentation?
Have not come across a tiered approach. I think that would make it easier for the staff, honestly, because what happens is we meet with developers and they ask, and I make a recommendation to the council. So I go through, some of their criteria, we put together a package for them, and we put it in front of the council for consideration. A tiered approach would make it much easier on the staff, because it would be, if you meet these guidelines, this is what you get for a package. If you meet these guidelines, this is what you get for a package. I've just not seen that. I've seen cities that offer kind of your minimum, and then you can go higher. But that doesn't mean it doesn't exist and I can't go looking for it. Would you be interested in something like that?
I don't know, part of me kind of feels like, we all know what we're facing, and maybe we have to put a little bit more skin in the game, make it a little bit more desirable for larger, commercial businesses to come here. And if we had something black and white that said, hey, if you do this much of construction investment in our community, you're going to get this, and they don't have to just, spend their time chasing us down. I feel like we just need to potentially take a more proactive approach than a reactive. With me, this is kind of reactive, right? Waiting for them to come. If we take a proactive saying, we want this type of business in our community, spelling that out. But I don't know if that would provide any value or not.
Similar to what Jeff was asking, did the survey feedback get into specifics on where we weren't as competitive?
No, I think the comment on the survey was that the developer didn't know we offered incentives and we don't publish it on the city's website. And I have mixed feelings about that. I do want to be transparent, but if you put it on the city's website, I do think everybody asks for it. So the question is, what is your preference on how we handle it? Not every developer comes in and asks for incentives. Some of them ask at the phase where it's too late to ask for incentives, and I have that as a talking point tonight as well. But Rob, that was the comment that was made.
Okay.
And I do think that's kind of for us to decide here. Do we want to use it as a recruiting tool? Hey, this is out there. Let's put all this money. Or do we want to say, you know what, we want to hang on to this money unless somebody asks for it, or if there's really a reason, to push for it. So, and again, do we want to push for it and bring everything forward? Or if they don't need it, don't give away the money.
I feel like we should use it as a carrot, right? Because I feel like we're in the position we are because maybe we don't have these publicly available information. I don't know, I'm not that close to it, right? I'm only assuming, but I think providing a carrot wouldn't be, other than spending the money, but if you're bringing the business to the town, that tax base, those jobs, someone help me understand what the downside would be.
I'm coming to Polk City anyway, and I can afford it, and I don't need it, but you'll give it to me anyway.
Yep.
But again, how frequent is that the scenario? Again, we probably do want to use it more as a recruiting tool maybe than we are.
But maybe we're not getting as much.
Yeah, people
stuff.
aren't looking at us because they don't know it's there. Yeah, I feel like maybe though that was the approach before was, well, if somebody asks for it and they need it, we can, but this would be, I think, a shift in using it as a
I think we
tool.
all agree we want more commercial business, and maybe we just have to pull the Band-Aid off and do this, right?
And do we want any commercial, because we don't have any sort of these type, this is, I think, as I recall, it's pretty wide open. You know, are there any
Well, how would-
that we want to incentivize?
Oh,
And
Yeah, maybe
any
that-
that we don't,
maybe
you
that
know,
goes
where
back to the
it's,
tiered approach, right?
yeah.
I don't know. I feel like something needs to change. Otherwise, we're just gonna have the same results. I just don't know what the right answer is, so I'm looking to others for feedback.
My first inclination is to try to keep as much of the tax dollars flowing to us and to the other taxing entities, particularly the school district, as we can. So I'm inclined to say we don't necessarily want to advertise, but I absolutely acknowledge there's an element to trying to encourage people to come. So I guess my first question then becomes, do we know if we've missed out on opportunities because we haven't advertised?
I don't know how you,
And I don't know how you would answer that question.
yeah.
Not to my knowledge. That doesn't mean it didn't happen. We have been involved with developers that have gone to another city and they've said, you know, this is what this city's offering me. That's piracy under the Iowa code. It prohibits a city from having conversations back and forth with a developer when they're using another city against you. I don't know that it's happened.
But you don't know what you don't know.
Right, right. Yeah, we've had developments fall through, you know, and sometimes that is because they couldn't make their project profitable. You know, could the city have stepped up and said, well, we could have offered more incentives, and maybe they didn't ask for that? It's possible, but nothing comes to my mind.
And I agree with you, Nick. I think we should, we have the due diligence to keep our tax dollars here as much as possible, but is the 10-year return, if you look big picture, right, is that gonna be there? I struggle with not changing anything.
I think the change is warranted. I think the excuse me, I think the tiered approach is going to be a good way to offer some clarity. My qualm just comes back to how much do we advertise this? And is it the city's job to advertise this? Is this something that should come about because of chamber relations? Should they be the ones advertising this to people who come sniffing around Polk City looking for things to build? Yeah, I don't know.
I will
But I
work
would-
on a tiered, I can certainly work on that. I'll bring that to you, though, for consideration.
Yeah, I think that'd be a challenge though for you, based on what you said. You don't know of any other cities that do something like that, right?
Yeah, that doesn't mean that we can't start something. We could do based off of anticipated assessed value, and, you know, if it's a bigger project, maybe we increase the terms. I think it's very doable. I've just not seen anything.
So valuation is one aspect of it.
Yes,
Would you envision putting jobs created into the tiering?
Yes.
Because again, I think with Polk City too, part of it is people leave during the day. So for certain businesses
Yeah.
that, are traffic driven and it's quiet during the day, I think that would help as well too, to incentivize, bring people to work in Polk City.
No, yeah, most definitely.
yeah.
The last component being the things in particular we want to bring. There's a clause in here already about businesses that the council in particular wants, thinking things like the hardware store, like a pharmacy, things of those nature, and building that in some way after, I guess, we identify what things we think we need and want to bring in.
Well, and maybe that's something that should be revisited periodically, like have a list, and with us and maybe with input from Go Polk City. I said a lot there, but yeah, because I do think there are definitely things people in town would like to have, like a pharmacy, and maybe that gets it a bump on the tier because it's bringing
Yeah,
jobs and it's bringing a desired service in addition to the tax. Aspect.
Hypothetically, could we potentially say, hey, if we all want a pharmacy, right? If we brought a pharmacy in, we could give you 100% for whatever. Is that allowed, something like that?
It's a
Okay.
council policy. We can put anything in the policy. And the more information in the policy, the easier it is for me.
Yeah, having maybe sort of like a scoring thing where you get bonus points for more value, bonus points for, and so that brings you up on the tiers.
Quiet. Any thoughts?
Well, I think we're digging deeper than we should be right now. We're looking at things we want, and we really should just be focusing on what the policy should be to incentivize somebody that wants to move into town means they want to come to town, there needs to be available property for them to come to town.
Okay.
And there's things that we're missing like that, infrastructure in particular, that you want industrial business to potentially come in town. Well, you might not have sewer, water, electric, utilities to handle those types of things. And in terms of advertisement, I don't think there's advertising here. This is just simply the policy that stays out on the internet. And if you have a developer that wants to come to town, they're going to be talking to you anyway. And they're probably savvy enough to understand that our TIF policy is going to be similar, if not the same, as other TIF policies within the community, because we're not going to be doing anything drastically different to attract somebody. You know, it's an agreement, and it comes with give and take between the developer and the city. You know, that's why we have the developers agreement, a development agreement. So, I mean, I'm fine looking at a tiered approach. I don't know that it's going to magically make or incentivize people to come, though. It makes it easier for you at City Hall, and that's great. I think streamlining the process is wonderful, but I don't think we want to think that we have this new policy and bam, you know, someone's knocking on our door day and night to build here either.
Yeah, I guess I wasn't under the impression that's what it would do.
Yeah.
I think we were focusing just on the policy, not the potential lack of infrastructure and
Yeah.
some of the other things, right? We're trying to identify a policy that when people are reviewing, based on the comments in the feed or the survey, we were trying to be a little bit more clear for the people that were looking at it.
Right.
So, I mean, I agree. I don't know how you take care of all the other issues when we're just doing these.
Right.
We're not, we're taking more of a micro approach than a macro.
Yep.
Okay, this is great feedback. I appreciate this. I'm gonna throw a few more things at you. So moving on, right now, the city does not offer tax abatement. We do offer transitional taxes. If a property voluntarily annexes into city limits, we can offer them transitional taxes on the city tax portion, and we have done that recently. I've personally not been a fan of tax abatement. Tax abatement is very different than a rebate agreement. Rebate requires the developer to do all of the things up front, and the city does their part on the back end. It puts a lot of responsibility on the developer to do their part first, and that is why I'm a fan of the rebate agreement. Tax abatement is very different in that the developer just doesn't pay taxes. It's a little bit more difficult to ensure that the development turns out exactly like the city council envisioned, but our policy says we shy away from tax abatement. The city doesn't have an updated urban revitalization plan, which is something you would have to do before we offered a tax abatement program. We could offer what is allowed by the state of Iowa, but we typically don't. I really try to push people to the rebate agreement. I know some cities do tax abatement. I know Bondurant has done it for the Amazon project. I know other cities are very against tax abatement. I know the city of Grimes does not offer tax abatement. Do you all feel strongly one way or another on that topic?
I generally agree. I don't think we want to encourage them to fulfill what we think they're going to fulfill as far as their project. So yes, I'm in agreement with you,
Okay,
away from abatement towards rebates.
Go ahead, Rob, if you had something.
Oh, sorry, I was just gonna say, I'm not in favor of it. I think Bondurant's the outlier, and I don't know that they've demonstrated much success with it. So, yeah, I don't see much of a reason to change our mentality here.
Yeah, there would have to be some exceptional development to come in that, you know, is a slam dunk, but you're usually not getting projects with abatement like that. I mean, why someone would do that with like an Amazon is kind of a head scratcher, but I'm generally not in favor of it either.
Okay. Okay. One other thing, the city does not pay developers upfront. I have had some requests for this in the past. To be honest with you all, Polk City is, I would say we're not sitting on an abundance of TIF money, so that makes it a little bit more difficult. Where you see cities giving developers money upfront, it's typically the larger cities. It is much riskier to the city to give money upfront. That's why I'm a fan of the rebate agreement, is the developer takes the risk on, does everything they're supposed to do, then they get their money. I'd give the example of the Move project. We had entered into a rebate agreement with them. Had that money been put up front, the city could be out that funding. Do you all agree we should keep that in our policy, that we do not offer TIF incentives up front, or is that something you want to reevaluate?
Is there is there a scenario in which offering money up front for infrastructure built out the way we would want it, where that would make sense? Thinking of things like the turn lane, like sewer upsizing, things that they're going to have to get done early in their projects to begin with. Is there a scenario where that makes sense? Question, not comment. I don't know.
Yes, I think so. I think you could phrase it that way, where if it's something the city is getting in return or has agreed to, you could certainly offer that way. You just want to make sure that you've got a Loctite agreement with the developer that if they walk away, you get your money back somehow. And I don't know exactly how you would phrase that.
Okay.
So you're gonna give them money and they're gonna go hold money in escrow. So it doesn't make any sense to work that way. If they have money to hold, they have money to pay for whatever they're trying to build.
Nick, for context, like the Antler Ridge trunk sewer, that trunk sewer had to be ready to accept before we would disperse any of that grant. So that's kind of the way that we've worked in the past. So maybe the developer got his money 12 months earlier, that he still hadn't basically done.
Okay, then that would be something we would work out in a development agreement anyway, as opposed to offering it up front. So, yeah, if there's not a good reason to offer it, then no. Nope. that
I
puts
forgot
the-
we had
puts
done
the
that.
risk on us.
We've done that for 2 agreements where we've asked the developer to upsize or loop the water main. And we've done that disbursement. That allows them an opportunity to draw, and they don't have to wait for final completion.
And those were the kinds of things I was thinking about possibly applying to here, but if it doesn't make sense to do it in an even more forward fashion, then no.
Okay. Another talking point I want to bring up with the council is the policy does say incentives must be discussed prior to submittal of a site plan. I would say we have run into this a number of times where the developers brought forth a site plan, they're starting construction, and then they ask for incentives. I could probably understand if it was a project that the city was really interested in, but I feel like this happens enough where it's like, well, the developer could have done more due diligence on their part to make sure that, if there was something that was costing them an excessive amount of money, they could have had that conversation earlier. Do you all feel strongly about that the policy says that it has to be discussed prior to submittal of a site plan and that we won't offer incentives much past that part of the process?
Yes.
Okay,
I wouldn't think that they would start on a project if they didn't know exactly what they were getting money-wise, if they didn't know exactly where all their funding was coming from. So yes, I would be very confused as to why they would come to us after and ask for additional incentives, barring some huge change in materials costs, something different about their plan.
We've had that happen a couple times here in recent years.
We have, yeah, we have.
So it's just a lack of due diligence on behalf of the developer. If you're gonna come into a community, you should probably read the fine print.
That's where I'm at, yeah.
But we've had some flexibility too.
I mean, if it's reasonable and makes sense, and it's not for lack of better terms, a money grab.
Right.
Things happen, and I think needs to be flexibility, but to hard line absolutely no, you'll never do it is, might be a little excessive. Just like everything else in life, you do have a level of flexibility, cautiously.
Okay, does the council have any concerns about offering incentives? Do you think I can try to put something together on a tiered package, so that it is tiered based off of higher, quality projects? I will try to put something together around that. Are there any other, changes you want me to make to the policy? And then I want to have the conversation tonight that with the discussion of property tax reform in recent years, this is always something that is in the back of my mind on if there was reform made to property tax system in Iowa, I feel like the incentive package would probably be one of the first things we'd have to talk about cutting.
Is there a way to build into our policy an out for us if property taxes change in a way that radically alters how we can use TIF?
Yes?
I think, given what I've seen and heard attempted out of the State House, I think an escape clause for us would be useful.
Well, isn't that already in the disclaimer down there?
Yes.
Yeah, so I thought.
But we could certainly put something around that topic in there. So I do know that we do get some feedback from some developers on the city's architectural standards and that is costly to them. We are actually going through a process with planning and zoning right now where we've taken quite a few comparisons from the metro, and we're actually low on architectural standards. So we will be discussing this with planning and zoning, making some changes there. But I do like to bring that to your attention. I know that is a common theme that we hear from developers, that we have high architectural standards. And the staff has spent quite a bit of time over the past few months looking into that. And we've actually determined we're pretty low compared to the metro. Now, we might have higher standards compared to more rural communities. That comment might be coming more from comparing more rural communities, but that'll be something that is coming forward to you in the next few months. So I do know on the question that was brought up, why do developers ask for incentives after they've gone through the process? Well, sometimes it just so happens that they're like, the city has these architectural standard requirements, or they have these additional requirements for us to put in a sprinkler system, and we'd like you to incentivize us for that. So I think it's a slippery slope. I think it's either you allow some flexibility or it's a no. After you're through the site plan, we don't offer it.
So we used to get some pretty good consultation when the Polk City Development Corporation was separate from the chamber, and that's one of the things that's really gone away as the group has combined. I do think this needs to be a collaborative piece where they're sharing what they hear, and I think Stacy's done that in pockets, but maybe not to the proactive extent that would be helpful to make programmatic policy changes here. Because there are, like on some of these architectural standards, it's pretty easy to align around the communities, but we've got specific needs. Where the highways aren't getting any closer, access to certain things that have been harmful for us getting more commercial aren't changing. And so we need to identify what we can attract and what we can change to help nudge those things and identify areas that, quite honestly, we may not be able to change things. I'm 100% in agreement with Jeff that a new approach, I'm certainly interested in a new approach to have different results, but I think we need to come into this with our eyes open too, and part of this is a joint effort with a development corporation entity.
Yeah, if a developer comes in and says, we want it to be incentivized because we don't like the architectural standards, or you're making us do something that's already in the code, I mean, to me, that's, well, no. You had your chance to ask those questions before site plan submittal. You should know what you need to build. You can't just come in here and throw up a shack or propose a shack and think you're gonna not have to do what's in the code. You know, the slippery slope is that. It's those other intangibles that we don't always think about, where they have a financing issue or they decide to make a last minute change for the better. You know, then maybe city incentivized programs could kick in. But if it's a black and white in the code, then no, do your due diligence. Everyone else does.
I would agree with that statement. And no matter what we do, I mean, we all agree that we could make this the most flexible thing, and someone's gonna find a problem with it, right? So we have to figure out, you know, where's the truth? What's things we should actually look at and review and adjust? I'm not trying to bend over backwards for everybody, because like I said, no matter what we do, someone's gonna be unhappy with it. If you go back to the survey, those people that responded negatively, they could have had a bad day, and, you know, we're making a bunch of changes based on that. So I hope as we move forward and these things come up, and we take them as a opportunity for lessons learned and see where there's opportunity to make changes moving forward. But like I said, I feel like people are gonna try to take advantage of this as much as possible.
Our code is easily accessible on the website, isn't it?
It is.
Does it have a table of comments, a table of contents that addresses if you're a new business wanting to come to town? Here's what you should know.
I don't think it does.
No, it doesn't. The code is very, it's very black and white. You know, it identifies the requirements for a site plan and what the site plan process is. And, yeah, you can review building code to know what your requirements are if you're constructing a building. You have to look for it, and you do have to read it. That is, you know, that is the one thing. We don't necessarily have a cheat sheet.
You have applications that have checklists, so.
We do. Yes, we've tried to make that part easier.
Well, and anybody coming to town should be reading it. It should be a go-to thing.
Yeah. Does anybody have any other feedback? This has been so helpful tonight, and I wanted to get this policy back in front of you. It's been a number of years probably since we've reviewed it. So I will work on a revision to the policy to have in front of the council. I will try to do my best based off the feedback you've provided me tonight, but I would expect this on an upcoming agenda.
Thank you for the effort, like for bringing this for discussion. And I know the architectural standards, because again, with the survey, you know, you don't know who all responded, how you know, all of those things, but it's a good idea to look at some things that we're doing, and maybe there's nothing to change, maybe there's slight adjustments, but kind of going back through these things, I think, is helpful. And, you know, anything we do to improve it, great. And for some things, we've solidified, no, we don't want to change this, and we're all confident in that, and it's easy for you to stick to, so, thank you.
Yes. Yep. Okay, thank you.
That is our second item on the agenda. Third item is adjournment, and our time is pretty good there. So I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
And all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned until our